Although the Belle Isle Aquarium doesn't have the largest aquariums in the US or the most unique collection of fish, it has a charm and beauty that is unmatched by any other US aquarium. When the 118-year-old aquarium opened in 1904, it was the third largest in the world and had salt water shipped from the ocean to this aquarium located in Detroit, Michigan. When you walk in it feels as though you are swimming underwater right alongside the fish in the tanks. Enjoy the tour of the Belle Isle Aquarium, and remember, the aquarium is so much better in person, but I hope this condensed tour will do it the justice it deserves, being America's oldest aquarium. So here at the aquarium library, I'm a freshwater scrub, and I love me a good planted tank. And this planted tank here is no exception. It's a beautiful tank that has a lot of crypts, java ferns, some vallisneria, and some mosses interspersed. There's also a lot of really cool fish in here. I love the clown loaches with tiger barbs, and the tiger barbs swimming around chasing after one another and having all this open space to be able to swim around through the trees that my wife pointed out. She asked, are they actually trees? And I said, no, they're actually just trident java ferns. And she was actually very surprised. And up top we have a reticulated hill stream loach and among those trees. And while we were going through is actually feeding time. So we got to see the rainbow fish and tiger barbs all feeding up top. And you can see how long the vallisneria was at the very top of the tank. I just think that rock pile with that moss growing over was absolutely beautiful. And we're going to move over to our next tank, which is actually across the world in the Congo of Africa. And here we have some Congo tetras and we have some Mabu puffers. We actually have two Mabu puffers in this tank with the Nubius, and I was very surprised to see two Mabu puffers together. I always thought that they were supposed to be solitary animals, but I guess when you have tanks that are as large as these that are pushing upwards of 400 to 1,200 gallons per tank with smaller juvenile Mabu puffers, I guess you can get away with that. I'd be very interested to see in years to come if they're still here, if the two are still here, and if they are still getting along well. I love Mabu puffers. I think that they are a great way to showcase the freshwater hobby to people in a show that you can actually have pufferfish in freshwater. So next we leave Africa and head over to Mexico, and we have this beautiful tank with rocks, some wood, and some vallisneria, and we have some butterfly split-fin gudillas, which are critically endangered in their native habitats, as are a lot of gudillas in Mexico. And these fish are an absolutely beautiful fish, and I would love to keep some gudillas in the future, either these or some Mimica splendens or something of the sort, because they are such a beautiful fish and are such an interesting fish that comes from this side of the hemisphere rather than from else parts of the world. This next tank here is from North America and is by far the most disappointing tank that was at the entire aquarium. It just felt like they dropped the ball in this situation where they could have chosen so much better fish to highlight the splendor and beauty that is the North American fishes that we have here. And instead they just chose nondescript minnows and nondescript darters. Literally they just put minnows and darters in the description and never actually said the species. Rainbow shiners in here with something else would have been fantastic, and instead you just had a couple more tanks right next to it that focused on yellow perch, black crappie with your bluegill, and your largemouth bass and smallmouth bass, and all the normal sunfish you're used to seeing. I just feel like when you have an aquarium like this, you can highlight these fish that people are used to, but why not show to them the beauties that we have here in North America rather than just going with the normal fish that everyone is used to seeing in the ponds that they fish. All right, I've ranted long enough about native fishes here, so we're going to show you guys the actual architecture of the back of this aquarium. And on the right was where we were just looking at the fish, and the back wall is where the saltwater fish are. That's where we're going to go to next. So in total they had about 10 saltwater aquariums back here, but the one I wanted to focus on the most were the garden eels, as I think these little eels are so cool in how they burrow into sand and pop their heads out and search around for food and then dart back into their holes, and just such a unique thing that is very uncommon in the freshwater hobby, and something that I like being able to see at aquariums, because I don't ever really have the chance to see it when I go explore people's fish rooms or visit other people's tanks at their homes. You don't see garden eels, but you see a lot of these other saltwater fish in other people's homes. So leaving saltwater, we get into our monster freshwater fish, and we actually have some stingrays here, some arowana, and then some barkin, which are a native fish that is very trout-like to the Amazon rainforest. We also have our other semi-monster fish, the Oscar here, which is sort of like a long fin / normal fin one. It's a very pretty one. And we also had some red hook silver dollars in here. I think this tank would have been so much better if they had another, say, 10 or so, 15 or so of these silver dollars in here, because they just make the tank. When you have a whole school of these guys swimming around in a tank, 10 or 15 of them, if not more, 20, is absolutely beautiful. It's a really cool tank, and I understand that they can't have everything, but another couple of silver dollars have been great. Staying with the cichlids, we have the Texas cichlid, which is actually the only native cichlid to America. It's very similar to other Central American cichlids, and they get very large in captivity. So it's really cool to see them in this rock shelf type tank with probably a good 75 of them in this aquarium, and just being able to see the dynamics of them playing out and seeing the males with the big humps and the females in here. The next tank that we have is actually It might be my favorite tank here, with the exception of the planet tanks, but this is the electric eel. And the thing that's really cool about this electric eel is that you'll hear the pulsating sounds. You'll hear the click, 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 and that clicking is actually it putting out electricity into the water for navigation, for searching for prey, and for stunning that prey. And we're actually going to be able to see the actual readout of it, so you can see the navigation here, the prey location, and what the actual amount of electricity that it is using at that given moment inside the tank. So it's that audible thumping that you're hearing. And we're gonna turn back over and we'll see him actually going around the tank, and you'll be able to see that actual reader and him going around the tank, so you can see what type of activity he's doing. And when he gets closer to the sidewalls, he gets a lot more pulsating navigation. This is a really cool interactive way to showcase this fish. And you can't forget about the bichers, these very primitive fish that almost every aquarium has, that are always really cool to look at, because they sort of look like water snakes, like actual snakes in the water, and just such a cool and prehistoric looking fish. And them piling up in one another, I can understand why people like keeping large amounts of them, but I just feel as though this is an obligatory thing to show, and this tank here is just a very well done bichir tank. The next 3 tanks are all African cichlid tanks. We're going to start off with our peacocks and haps that we have here. This is actually a really cool peacock tank. It isn't super overcrowded. It has a lot of really cool colors in it, and it just sort of showcases the beauty that is in freshwater that isn't necessarily always going to be saltwater with this type of coloration. The next tank that we have here is a Frontosa tank, and I absolutely love Frontosa. They remind me very similar, or this tank reminds me a lot of the Texas cichlid tank, where there's a wide variety of different ages and sizes in here, and you have the males with the giant nuchal humps, and you have all the little tiny babies swimming around, and the barring on them is obviously really cool, and it would be an awesome thing to have someday, but these are a very intensive fish, the amount of space they need. Finally, we have my favorite African cichlid tank that we had here, which is the Tropheus tank. I love Tropheus, and they are a very aggressive fish, and unfortunately, again, it takes a lot more tank space to keep them, but I just love how the juveniles progress from being spotted in this particular species to being a juvenile to then having those lines going through their vertical side. This next tank is by far and away my favorite tank in the entire aquarium, and it is a planet discus tank. You have discus, angelfish, rummy nose, corridoras, plecos, I think they had 2 different types of discus in here. They had the red pigeons, I believe. I'm not too good with discus names because I haven't kept them before, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And they also had some blue discus, which I think may have been cobalt blue discus. But anyways, this tank here is absolutely beautifully planted with Amazon swords, some crypts, some rotalas, and we had all the really cool, interesting stuff happening at the bottom of the tank with the rummy nose swimming around, with the cory cats, the bronze cory cat swimming around, digging through the gravel. And I think that that's what makes such a beautiful tank, is when you have multiple layers in a tank and can go from looking at the discus to being able to find something very interesting in the bottom of the tank. Speaking of the bottom of the tank, we had this blue phantom pleco, which I was very surprised and very happy to see out and about while we were at the aquarium, because they're usually rather reclusive during the day, and just was really cool to see such a large specimen. Here it looks relatively small in the tank, but it was actually a very, very large fish. Finally, here is the shot of the angelfish in the tank. There's probably 3 or 4 of them in here, and just to show you guys what the entire tank looks like. If you want to see how beautiful some of these native fishes can be from the US, check out my video on the Ellis Omega bird tie, and I'll see you guys over in that one. Have a blessed day, and hope you guys enjoyed the tour.